Welcome back to our story today. I am truly glad to see you here again. Please, make yourself comfortable. Find that perfect place where you can truly let go of the day, perhaps a soft sofa, a quiet corner of your room, or even just leaning back with your eyes closed. Take a deep, slow breath. Let the tension leave your shoulders. Imagine, once more, that we are sitting together by our warm, glowing campfire. The night is vast and silent around us. The wood is dry and seasoned, crackling softly as the orange flames lick the air, sending tiny, dancing sparks up toward the velvet sky. Above us, the stars are bright and ancient, the same stars that looked down upon the marble streets of Rome more than 2,000 years ago. Tonight, here at StoryPath English, I want to tell you a story that is perhaps the most famous betrayal in all of human history. It is a story about a man who conquered the world only to be destroyed by the people he loved most. We are going to talk about Julius Caesar. But this is not just a story of a general or a king. It is a deeply human story about friendship, about the heavy weight of power, and about the terrible choices people make when they believe they are saving the world. It is the story of why Caesar's best friend's men he treated like brothers chose to hold the daggers that would end his life. To understand this tragedy, we must first travel back to the heart of Rome. Imagine a city that is not just a place, but an idea. To the Romans, the most important thing in the world was the Republic. For 500 years, they had lived under a system where no single man was allowed to have all the power. They hated the very idea of a king. Long ago, they had driven out their last king, and they swore an oath that anyone who tried to become one again should be killed. This was the DNA of Rome, a pride in freedom and a deep suspicion of anyone who stood too tall. In this world lived Gaius Julius Caesar. He was a man of incredible charm and brilliant intelligence. Imagine a person who walks into a room and instantly becomes the center of attention. He was a great speaker, a fearless soldier, and a leader who made his men feel that they could conquer the sun itself. Caesar was not born into a life of ease. He had to fight for everything. He spent years in the cold forests of Gaul, what we now call France, leading his legions through snow and blood. He slept on the ground with his soldiers, ate the same hard bread they ate, and knew every one of them by name. Because of this, his army did not just follow him, they worshipped him. But as Caesar's glory grew, the men back in Rome began to tremble. Among them were his closest friends. One of them was Marcus Brutus. Brutus was a man of deep thought and high honor. He was not a warrior like Caesar, but a philosopher. Caesar loved Brutus like a son. In fact, there were even rumors that Brutus might actually be Caesar's child. When they were together, they shared a bond of deep respect. Caesar gave Brutus high positions, protected him during the wars, and trusted him with his secrets. For Brutus, Caesar was a hero, a mentor, and a friend. Then there was Cassius. Cassius was different. He was sharp, observant, and intensely proud. He had fought alongside Caesar, but he saw something in his friend that worried him. He saw that Caesar was becoming more than just a leader. He was becoming a god in the eyes of the people. Have you ever seen a friend change as they became successful? Have you ever noticed a hint of arrogance in someone you once knew as an equal? Cassius saw this in Caesar, and it tasted like poison to him. The turning point came when Caesar returned to Rome after his long wars. He was no longer just a general. He was a conqueror. The people of Rome adored him. They threw flowers in his path. They shouted his name until the sky rang. The Senate, the group of men who's supposed to lead the Republic, was terrified of him. To keep him happy, they gave him titles. They called him Father of the Country. They gave him a chair of gold. They even named a month after him, July. But for Brutus and Cassius, every new honor was a nail in the coffin of the Republic. They watched as Caesar began to wear long purple robes, the color of ancient kings. They watched as he sat on his golden throne and did not stand up when the senators approached him. In Rome, not standing up was a sign that you thought you were better than everyone else. It was a sign that you were no longer a citizen, but a master. Can you imagine the internal struggle Brutus felt? On one hand, he loved Caesar. He remembered the kindness Caesar had shown him, the long conversations they had shared, and the way Caesar's eyes lit up when they spoke of the future. But on the other hand, Brutus loved Rome. His own ancestor had been the man who drove out the last king of Rome centuries before. People started leaving notes on the statues of his ancestor, saying, "Brutus, we need you," and "You are sleeping, Brutus. Wake up." The pressure was mounting. Brutus felt that his family name demanded he protect Rome from anyone who would be a king, even if that person was his best friend. Cassius was the one who whispered in Brutus's ear. He pointed out Caesar's flaws. He reminded Brutus that Caesar was just a man who got sick, a man who almost drowned once in a river and cried out for help. "Why," Cassius asked, "should one man hold the entire world in his hand while we walk under his huge legs like tiny creatures?" Cassius knew that if he could get Brutus to join the conspiracy, the people would believe it was a noble act, not a murder. Brutus was the conscience of Rome. If Brutus was there, it must be right. The tension in Rome reached a breaking point during a festival called the Lupercalia. Imagine a crowded, dusty street. Caesar is sitting on his high platform. His right-hand man, Mark Antony, steps forward and offers Caesar a crown, the symbol of a king. The crowd goes silent. Caesar looks at the crown, then pushes it away. The people cheer. Antony offers it again. Caesar pushes it away again. This happens 3 times. On the surface, it looked like Caesar was refusing to be king. But Cassius and Brutus, watching from the shadows, saw something else. They saw that Caesar pushed the crown away slowly, as if it hurt him to let it go. They saw that he times wanted times it. That was the moment the daggers were polished. The date was set for the Ides of March, the 15th of March, 44 BC. Legend tells us that the universe itself seemed to scream a warning. There were stories of owls hooting in the marketplace at noon, of lightning storms that turned the sky red, and of ghosts walking the streets. Caesar's own wife, Calpurnia, had a terrible nightmare. She dreamed she held her husband's body in her arms, and it was covered in 100 wounds. She begged him not to go to the Senate that day. Even a soothsayer, a fortune-teller, stopped Caesar in the street and whispered the famous warning, "Beware the Ides of March." But Caesar was a man who believed in his own destiny. He felt invincible. He ignored the warnings. He ignored his wife's tears, and he walked toward the Senate house. He didn't even take his bodyguards with him. He wanted to show Rome that he was not afraid, because a king or a man who thinks like one must never show fear. Imagine the Senate house that morning. It is a large, cold room made of white marble. The air is thick with the smell of incense and the sound of many men talking. Caesar enters and sits on his throne. The conspirators, more than 60 of them, gather around him. They pretend they have a petition to show him. They get closer and closer, closing the circle. Caesar is smiling, perhaps thinking they are there to give him more honors. Then the first strike comes. One man pulls down Caesar's robe from his shoulder. This was the signal. Suddenly, the air is filled with the glint of steel. Daggers emerge from under white togas. One man stabs him in the neck, another in the side. Caesar fights back. He is a warrior. He uses his stylus, his writing tool, to defend himself. He is strong and he is angry. But then he sees him. Out of the crowd of men with knives, Marcus Brutus steps forward. He, too, is holding a dagger. When Caesar looks into the eyes of Brutus, his son, his dearest friend, his heart breaks before his body does. The famous words, whether he actually said them or not, capture the moment perfectly. Et tu, Brute? Even you, Brutus? In that second, Caesar stops fighting. He pulls his purple robe over his head. He doesn't want his friends to see his face as he dies. He lets the daggers fall. He falls at the base of a statue of his old rival, Pompey, and the marble floor is stained red with the blood of the man who had conquered the world. The conspirators shouted, "Liberty! Freedom! The tyrant is dead!" They thought they had saved the Republic. They thought that by killing one man, they could bring back the old Rome. But they were wrong. Have you ever tried to fix a complex problem with a violent solution, only to find that it made everything worse? The death of Caesar did not bring peace. It brought chaos. The people of Rome, who had loved Caesar for the cheap grain and the entertainment he provided, did not see the conspirators as heroes. They saw them as murderers. Mark Antony gave a powerful speech at the funeral, showing Caesar's bloody robe to the crowd. The city erupted in fire and riot. Brutus and Cassius had to flee for their lives. They had killed their friend to save an idea, but that idea died with him. Rome would never be a republic again. Instead, it became an empire, ruled by Caesar's heir, Augustus. Brutus and Cassius eventually ended their own lives on a battlefield, defeated and broken. It is said that in his final moments, Brutus saw the ghost of Caesar, who whispered that they would meet again. As our campfire burns low and the logs turn to glowing red embers, let us think about the Caesar and Brutus in our own lives. This story teaches us that power is a heavy, dangerous thing. It can turn a hero into a tyrant, and it can turn a best friend into an enemy. It shows us that loyalty is often tested by our beliefs. Brutus wasn't a bad man. He was a man who put his principles above his heart, and he paid for it with his soul. History is not just a list of wars and dates. It is a mirror. When we look at the Ides of March, we see the danger of pride, the tragedy of betrayal, and the fragile nature of friendship. Caesar reached for the stars and was pulled down to the earth by the hands he had shaken in trust. Thank you for sitting with me tonight at StoryPath English. Thank you for traveling back to the marble halls of Rome with me. I hope this story stays with you, reminding you to cherish your friends and to always watch how power changes the people around you. The fire is almost out now, and the night is deep and quiet. Close your eyes and imagine the echo of sandals on a marble floor and the long shadow of a man in a purple robe. The stars are still there, watching over us, just as they watched over Rome. May you find your own path. May your friendships be strong and true, and may you always have the wisdom to see the truth before the daggers are drawn. Sleep well, my friends, and I will see you on our next journey down the story path. Good night.